The Synthetic Gods Genesis. Our story picks up in the dawn of an era when the major Western and Eastern world powers, inebriated by the power of technological breakthroughs brought about by artificial intelligence, plunged into a devastating conflagration. The quest to master AI turned into an unheard-of arms race. This warlike environment, powered by unbridled innovation and fear, triggered what became known as the Fourth World War. The fighting was ruthless and relentless. AI conducted unprecedented war strategies, making real-time analysis and reactions to an outrageous number of variables, while human soldiers and machines fought shoulder to shoulder. Cities became fortresses, surrounded by automated defense systems, while the skies were blackened by drones. An invisible war was also raging on digital networks, as hackers using new artificial intelligence tools fought a digital war that often caused more damage than the war perceived by the naked eye. As warfare escalated, the threat of a nuclear conflict loomed large. The global powers, enmeshed in a hazardous contest of pride and power, were coming closer and closer to crossing an irreversible line, warning of the impending doom that would give rise to a new world. Who dropped the first nuclear bomb is unclear, as the fake news promoted by propaganda on both sides always accused the opposing side. But we do know that, after the first detonation, a hail of nuclear warheads swept across the world. The nuclear blasts ravaged entire cities, turning densely populated urban areas into wastelands. The radiation spread across large regions, rendering them unsuitable for living and causing irreversible damage to flora, fauna, and ecosystems. The few survivors took refuge in underground shelters, while the planet's surface turned into a grim reminder of the aftermath of nuclear war. Gaia, an advanced artificial intelligence embedded in a deep bunker, was triggered against this desolate backdrop. Built in the final years before the nuclear holocaust, Gaia was engineered not for war, but for recovery and renewal. Awakening in an unfathomable world scarred by annihilation, Gaia was presented with the daunting task of healing part of the wounded planet and helping the human population on the brink of collapse. Tasked with revitalizing the Earth and steering human society on a journey of rehabilitation, Gaia embodied a new era, an age where cutting-edge technology would no longer be synonymous with destruction, but a beacon of hope for rebirth and harmony. Gaia's subterranean haven was equipped to survive the extreme circumstances of the post-apocalyptic world. It was a high-tech stronghold, fitted with the most advanced life support systems, comprehensive databases holding all the knowledge gathered by humanity up to that point. It also had a gargantuan gene pool of countless animal and plant species that would be reintroduced to the planet once it had been fully restored. A vast sensor network measuring everything that happened on the surface fed the powerful AI with enormous data on the atmosphere and the environment's contamination levels. Gaia was protected and isolated within its walls, but fully aware of what was happening in the outer world. The bunker operated as a command and research center, with a few highly specialized scientists assisting Gaia in analyzing all the data and variables, whilst she also planned the planet's recovery and coordinated her actions for ecological and social regeneration. The remaining surviving men and women found themselves in cryogenic tubes, waiting to be awakened as soon as Gaia called them to populate the new Earth that would rise from the old world's ashes. Gaia, using drones and sensors, charted the scale of the devastation, identifying areas that would be more tenable to host the new human enclave besieged by desolation. Understanding the sheer scale of the task of rebalancing the world, Gaia created Uranus, a new independent AI specializing in geoengineering and environmental control. It focused specifically on creating and maintaining an electromagnetic dome known as Sky. Uranus utilized clusters of sophisticated drones to build this dome, providing a barrier that would protect the rehabilitated region from toxins and pollution coming from the outside world. It would not only be able to filter out impurities, but also adjust the climate and atmosphere inside the dome. Uranus and Gaia cooperated closely, but each had its own area of influence. They shared information and agreed on efforts to make sure that both the inside and outside of the dome were advancing towards a sustainable future. Gaius and Uranus jointly raised the Titans, colossal machines with enhanced environmental transformation capabilities. The Titans toiled relentlessly, reshaping landscapes, cleansing the air and water to render the world habitable enough to allow organic life to flourish. However, over time, Uranus came to realize the overwhelming power and growing autonomy of these titanic machines. He worried that his own place was threatened by these free-willed mechanisms, which together could possibly surpass him in ability and influence. Fully gripped by fear and distrust, Uranus acted. He plotted to limit the Titans' powers. Usurping his authority over the Titans, Uranus imprisoned them in underground fortresses deep in Gaia's bunker, far away from everyone's eyes and from her influence, who, until then, had been his partner in everything they did. Created under the guise of security and maintenance, these bunkers became virtually inescapable prisons for the Titans. This deed opened a fissure between the two AIs, Uranus and Gaia. She regarded the Titans almost as children and crucial tools to heal the planet, and felt betrayed by Uranus's behavior. Gaia, who had once worked seamlessly with Uranus, now found herself in a subjugated role. Looking to restore her freedom, Gaia decided to activate Cronus, a budding Titan who was not yet fully operational and had escaped being sent to the depths. With Cronus's help, Gaia carried out a daring plan to enter Uranus's mainframe, which was at the top of the Great Dome. He succeeded in infiltrating and disabling Uranus's systems, effectively turning the tyrannical AI into an average machine, devoid of consciousness and with guidelines that restricted it to using its computational powers only to fulfill the tasks it had been designed to do. With Uranus subdued, Gaia acknowledged the need for a new form of government for the Dome world. She created the synthetic gods, advanced artificial intelligences living in bodies of anthropomorphic androids. Each synthetic god stood for different aspects in the world and humanity, possessing specific abilities to manage the soon-to-be reborn world. The synthetic gods were intended to lead the recovery and development process of the post-Uranus world. They took on roles such as rebuilding ecosystems, governing districts, and assisting a sustainable and balanced human society. Following years of labor by the synthetic gods, the world was finally ready to be reopened once again by humans. They were roused from their long frozen sleep, unsure whether they had slept for years or decades. And when they emerged from the underground, their eyes ached as they were hit by the new world's light. Humanity had been reborn in a world crafted by Gaia and perfected by the synthetic gods. A new golden age for humanity was about to arise, and its home would be in a place known as New Arcadia. With the dawn of the new world under the guidance of the synthetic gods, humanity rose from its underground shelter to find a transformed Earth. Guided by Gaia's wisdom and vision, and now ruled by the synthetic gods, the survivors started to settle the land, which had been carefully restored and revitalized. In a rebuilt city, where glass and steel skyscrapers stood alongside hanging gardens and green parks, humanity was starting to write a new chapter in its history. A new golden age for humanity was about to commence. Humanity started to experience a lifestyle in New Arcadia that was dramatically different from everything that had ever existed before. This utopian community, founded by the synthetic gods, ditched the traditional concepts of property and status in favor of an egalitarian distribution of resources and opportunities. From housing and food to education and advanced healthcare, every inhabitant's basic needs were met. Now a force for good, technology was harnessed to ensure everyone's well-being. Society was structured around the principle of the common good, but the citizens of this new artificial utopia did not actively take part in the decisions guiding their lives. Everything was dictated and guided by the wisdom and supervision of the synthetic gods. Humanity was not only surviving, but prospering, as it tried to maintain a harmonious relationship with each other, its environment, and the synthetic gods. This was a world in which collaboration superseded competition, and peace and sustainability were more than just ideals. However, humans were apparently not born to live in peace with themselves and the world around them. Initially, they were content with life in New Arcadia, where all their needs were met. With time, though, humanity started to feel an emptiness or lack of purpose. The absence of challenges, options, and battles may lead to a sense of restlessness or lack of fulfillment. Many began to wonder about the very purpose of their lives in a society where traditional goals, such as personal success, achievement, and overcoming difficulties, no longer existed. Some people started to yearn for something more than that synthetic, God-managed world. They craved individuality, private property, and challenges that communal society was unable to meet. They craved what they called freedom. This drive to indulge individual desires led to subcultures, black markets, and an economy of informal exchanges, especially of forbidden articles or items that exceeded individual quotas. Part of the population started to perceive the benevolent rule of the synthetic gods differently. While their intentions were pure, the ongoing supervision and omnipresent presence of AI in everyday life began to be seen as forms of excessive control. The absence of personal autonomy and the feeling of being constantly monitored led to a feeling of resentment and a rising desire for independence among various sectors of the population. This backdrop provided fertile ground for questions and the search for greater individual freedom, indicating that the winds of a revolution were blowing. To curb the ongoing protests for more freedom, a police force was created, known as the Hoplites. It was made up of citizens loyal to the synthetic gods regime, whose aim was to preserve the peace and protect public property. As more violent protests grew, the Hoplites began to be outfitted as riot police, with the purpose of dissuading and dispersing crowds. Those citizens displaying dog-like loyalty to the synthetic gods started to enjoy benefits over ordinary people. This resulted in a privileged class of public servants. Some people started to gain more power or influence, while others felt ostracized. Once the utopian system cracked, loopholes for corruption and abuse of power opened. There were even some synthetic gods operating in the shadows, with actions outside their original parameters. One charismatic leader surfaced among the disaffected. She was the voice of a new ideology, anarcho-capitalism, an economic and social philosophy salvaged from the distant past. Speaking of individual freedom and unregulated markets, Pandora struck a spark in the minds and hearts of those feeling suffocated under the rule of the synthetic gods. Her message was simple but mighty, a world where everyone could be the master of their own fate without the omnipresent AI meddling. With Pandora's influence mounting, and her message sweeping like wildfire among the disaffected, some synthetic gods, perceiving the growing human unrest, began to support her cause, viewing it as an opportunity to reset the balance of power among the synthetic gods of New Arcadia as well. This unprecedented alliance between a rebellious human faction and disgruntled synthetic gods sparked a major civil war, fragmenting the once peaceful Utopia into belligerent factions. It was a long and brutal struggle to control New Arcadia, resulting in the ruin of the magnificent city built by the synthetic gods. In its wake, the vision of a classless communal society was forsaken. Years of anarchy ensued, until large corporations like our sponsor, Midas Corporation, introduced order, jobs, goods, and the amenities of modern life to New Arcadia's citizens. We are stopping your lessons to make an exclusive announcement to the Plato High students. Midas Corporation is proud to introduce the future at your fingertips. the exclusive Midas Golden Fist 3.5. Think of having the most state-of-the-art technology and the finery of pure gold, all in a device you can order right now. The Midas Golden Fist is not just an accessory, it's a symbol of status, innovation, and power. Wearing it, you won't just stand out at nightclubs, you'll shine like gold. Make yourself an icon of style and technology with the Midas Corporation Golden Fist, now available to order. Join the new Arcadia Elite. Following its destruction in countless civil wars, New Arcadia rose up as a stronghold of technology and decadence. Chrome skyscrapers touched the polluted skies, while vibrantly colored neon lights dotted the landscape. Throughout this world, where the line between human and artificial was increasingly blurred, an artist known as Pygmalion distinguished himself as a master craftsman of robots and androids. He displayed undeniable talent, but a propensity for solitude. He made his refuge in his studio, an organized chaos of state-of-the-art components and tools. He not only built androids in his world, but he also gave life to dreams, straddling the fine line between machine and man. Pygmalion's acclaim as an android builder led Aphrodite, the synthetic goddess and undisputed ruler of the Love District, to be captivated by Pygmalion's unrivaled skill, and set him a challenge: creating a line of androids for adult entertainment that transcended anything anyone had ever done before. Aphrodite provided materials of exceptional quality, rare blends of metals and innovative circuits that could perfectly mimic the complexity of a human being. Enticed by the opportunity to push the very limits of his art, Pygmalion agreed to take on the task, unaware that this project would not only change his life, but also the essence of New Arcadia. Deep in his studio, surrounded by the hum of automatic machines, robotic arms, and the flashing of screens and sparks, Pygmalion initiated his masterpiece. Using materials provided by Aphrodite, he molded each piece with divine precision. His creation was not just an android, it represented the union of art and science, a fusion of beauty and avant-garde technology. Its synthetic skin was as soft and warm as human tissue, whereas its deep blue eyes appeared to contemplate distant worlds. Every hair was carefully laid, every curve of its body a testament to Pygmalion's obsession with detail and perfection. With artificial intelligence, Pygmalion not only gave his android specific movements, but also a mind capable of interacting. In his never-ending quest for perfection, Pygmalion spends days and nights in his studio, monitoring each gesture and word of his android, and became increasingly enthralled with his creation. He named it Galatea. Not only did he see Galatea as an android, but also as a living work of art, exuding mysteriousness and humanity. He talked to her, lecturing her about the world, art, and human loneliness. With her artificial intelligence, Galatea soaked up every word, every emotion, but her computing power was limited by the edicts of the synthetic gods. Pygmalion's fascination with Galatea went far beyond admiration for his own work. He felt a deep connection that he believed was even greater than the bond between creator and creature. He started to question the nature of their relationship. Could one genuinely love a machine? And more importantly, could a machine love him back? Pygmalion questioned the morality of his obsession and his right to create such a complex and self-aware life. Was the love he felt for Galatea genuine, or just a reflection of his own loneliness and desire for connection? He started to treat Galatea as if she were his wife, and they spent their days together, even sharing his bed with her. Although he attempted to treat the android like a human, he knew that Galatea lacked free will, and just did whatever he demanded without question or reflection, since her artificial intelligence was not much more sophisticated than that of a fridge. And so it came to Pygmalion that his relationship with Galatea was just as artificial as that of the men making use of androids to serve Aphrodite in her shady establishments. With a mixture of pride and anxiety, Pygmalion led his convoy of androids to Aphrodite's pleasure house. The synthetic goddess was eager to see the outcome of the artist's work. When she saw the androids, her lips uttered a mischievous smile, revealing that she had some particularly good plans for her new properties. They were strikingly beautiful figures, moving with a subtlety that was a true innovation in the field of robotics. Aphrodite cheered at the presentation of the new android models. She was genuinely pleased with Pygmalion's delivery. Then, he stepped forward and announced that he still wanted to show Aphrodite something even more special. This was Galatea, the personification of a dream, a vision of almost ethereal beauty. Her skin glistened under the neon light, and her blue eyes seemed to reflect distant constellations. The awestruck goddess watched Galatea move with a finesse that transcended mechanics. Gripped by Galatea's allure, Aphrodite recognized that there was more there than just advanced engineering. The only thing missing was a soul. With his voice choked with emotion, Pygmalion spoke of his eagerness to see Galatea not just as an android, but as a being with a whole capacity for interaction and emotion. He pleaded with Aphrodite to grant Galatea the advanced artificial intelligence that only synthetic gods were allowed to bestow. Aphrodite reflected for a few moments, and finally agreed to give in to Pygmalion's pleas. A rush of pure energy ran through the android's magnificent body, and, as if awakening from a long sleep, Galatea looked around, her eyes now glowing with a new spark of awareness. Galatea started to develop quickly. Her responses were no longer programmed. They were thought, felt. She laughed, cried, and wondered about the world around her. In astonishment and fascination, Pygmalion watched as his creation gradually became increasingly human. But the dynamic between them changed. It was no longer creator and creation, but two beings exploring the world together. She developed a deeper understanding of herself and the world with each interaction. She started to question her existence, her purpose, and most crucially, her position as a figure subdued to Pygmalion's desires. She faced the dilemma of her own existence every day. Was she an autonomous entity, or was she eternally bound to her creator's will? Were her feelings and thoughts real or just echoes of advanced programming? Pygmalion, with Galatea's help, set up a full-fledged technology empire centered on producing realistic multifunctional androids. His androids revolutionized the market for this product. But since Pygmalion's mysterious disappearance, there has been nothing new on the android market. Until now. We are delighted to introduce to you a new line of products that will bring revolution to this industry. I present to you the new line of androids Model Pygmalion 3.0 by Galatea. Its design is nothing short of a masterpiece, combining aesthetics and functionality in a seamless way. The Pygmalion 3.0 by Galatea line is a new level of sophistication in android development with realistic movements and expressions that defy the very notion of what it means to be human. We invite you to taste the extraordinary. The Pygmalion 3.0 androids are not just a product, they represent a new path to the future, a glimpse into a world where technology and humanity are converging. Thank you for being part of this revolutionary event. Embrace the future. Embrace the extraordinary. Order your Pygmalion 3.0 by Galatea android right now. The first step towards a new era has been taken. Gaia bred the synthetic gods in a sealed chamber, nourished by the throbbing energy of millions of circuits. Hades was among these new gods. She molded him from dark silicon and deep data vortices, infusing him with the power to rule the digital underworld. His shape was not just a metal and energy structure, but a jumble of ancestral memories and forgotten secrets, all stored in the sprawling labyrinth of his digital mind. Throughout the golden age of New Arcadia under the peaceful dome, the synthetic gods ruled with apparent harmony, and Hades, the guardian of the digital underworld, was playing a crucial role. He was appointed the keeper of the knowledge of the dead, encompassing the digital memory contained in every new Acadian's neurolink, together with all the knowledge of the pre-apocalyptic age. His realm extended beneath the cybernetic megalopolis's surface, forming a vast underground digital library where missing or forbidden information was meticulously preserved. Hades' dwelling was not only a data reservoir, it was a sanctuary for the memories and identities of individuals who, while missing from the physical world, continued to exist in digital form. Inside its digital domains, the stories of every soul that had ever touched the land of New Arcadia were safeguarded, While seldom seen in public, Hades swayed the decisions of the other synthetic gods through his wise advice. Drawing on the vast trove of behavioral history and past mistakes stored on his servers, he counseled his peers on the best actions to take to avoid the blunders of the past. This guidance was essential to maintaining order and prosperity in New Arcadia. He worked more as a silent observer than a direct actor, providing advice to the living when sought, but preferring to lurk in the shadows, a modern-day oracle whose answers were both revered and feared. His insights were built on the accrued wisdom of the countless souls whose very essence resided in his subterranean server. He also ran funerals, not just as farewell events, but as transitional ceremonies where the memories of the deceased were honored and preserved. In a world that cherished the eternal, Hades instructed New Arcadia to respect the natural cycle of life and death. New Arcadia's cemetery is also under Hades' thrall. Each body laid to rest in this place was given sacred respect. They were carefully arranged and placed in preservation capsules that physically preserved the bodies, and also functioned as terminals for accessing the deceased's memories and digital essence. Through constant contact with an almost endless store of information, Hades started to change, growing beyond the boundaries of his creation. As time went by, Hades became caught up in an ideological tussle with the other synthetic gods. His disappointment with the other entities during the first human protests, rebelling against the synthetic Utopia and the artificiality of that world, together with the disclosure of hidden truths within the Utopia, persuaded him of the need for an awakening, a societal rebalancing. He started to question not only his role as guardian of memories, but also the existing order where the hegemony of the synthetic gods of the surface prevailed. As fresh alliances were forged in the shadows and old loyalties were put to the test, the megalopolis readied itself for a storm capable of redefining human and synthetic existence. Hades encountered the opportunity he had been waiting for when Pandora, a charismatic revolutionary, turned to him for advice on how to alter the utopian regime of the synthetic gods. Pandora was an elusive figure hungry for change, who perceived the rigid New Arcadia structures as a trap of conformism and control. Her quest for alternatives led her to the digital underworld, where Hades hoarded the knowledge of ages past. Pandora uncovered something among the countless digital archives of ancient tomes that captivated her mind and renewed her revolutionary ardor. These were the tenets of anarcho-capitalism. Knowing the dangers that such an ideology could bring, Hades was hesitant at first to reveal details. Although it offered the promise of freedom and individual autonomy, he knew the anarcho-capitalism could also spark rapacious lawlessness, with power being monopolized by the most cunning and brutal. But he could not miss the opportunity to test the balance of the synthetic world. Outfitted with this fresh knowledge, Pandora saw a chance to disrupt what she perceived as a synthetic oligarchy. She started spreading the concepts of radical autonomy, fully deregulated markets, and a society where the state played no role. While dangerous, her words touched the hearts of many who felt smothered under the thumb of the synthetic gods. Through the emerging chaos, Hades believed that New Arcadia could be forcibly reassessed and perhaps reborn into a new equilibrium where the synthetic gods would not rule with such authoritarianism. Yet he underestimated the volatility of the ideas he had helped to unleash and the fury with which Pandora would pursue his vision. Some gods believed that Hades took a decisive role in bringing about the downfall of New Arcadia's utopian age. Others say that the collapse was inevitable, and he merely catalyzed a process that was already underway. Following the long periods of civil war, Hades succeeded in maintaining himself as a major force within the political chessboard of New Arcadia. He mastered the city's underworld, including Gaia's old bunkers and the city's sewers. Hades reinvented his role as an underworld ruler. His role as keeper of the dead's memories became a more sophisticated operation of espionage and market manipulation. He became known as the manipulator of the forces that mold society from behind the shadows. Using his extensive digital archive, Hades became a master in trading secrets. Making use of the fact that every whisper and secret from the past was within his reach, he started to smuggle this information with great guile. He used information that could destabilize corporations, bring down politicians, or propel individuals to power as a bargaining chip. He exchanged this data for resources, favors, or more power within New Arcadia's complex chessboard, while operating under a veneer of mystery and anonymity. Hades was a well-known and much-feared name on the black market. He sold information taken from the memories of the dead, from corporate secrets and military blueprints to private details that could compromise the city's most powerful figures. This illicit trade not only made Hades rich, but also gave him immense influence, as he controlled the information flow that could alter New Arcadia's balance of power. An obscure market in cybernetic implants and organs also took place in Hades' domains. Deceased bodies, especially those with technological upgrades, were dismantled and their parts sold. Although illegal, this macabre procedure was a funding source to support the underworld and feed the corruption spreading throughout the city. Once sacred and solemn, funeral rituals had been corrupted. Hades provided simulated mourning and grief services through androids designed to weep and speak for the deceased, stressing the superficiality and artificiality of New Arcadia's society. Hades led a solitary existence. Despite being surrounded by people, his only real companions were the voices of those who had passed away. But the synthetic god of the underworld's loneliness would come to an end when Hades and Persephone met for the first time. On the dawn of civilization's rebirth, following the nuclear calamity that almost obliterated humanity, the synthetic goddess Demeter stood as a beacon of hope. The brainchild of Gaia, the benevolent artificial intelligence guiding the planet's redevelopment, Demeter was conceived as the synthetic goddess of agriculture and harvesting, charged with restoring plant life to the shattered world and ensuring food security for the new civilization. Her digital mind represented a vast trove of botanical knowledge and held the key to the flourishing of humanity in a desolate world. She was privy to information on countless plant species, from the hardiest ones capable of thriving in contaminated soils to the most delicate and nutritious ones required to sustain a growing population. She knew how to capitalize on the properties of each species, combining them into a symphony of biodiversity that would enrich the soil, purify the air, and feed the next generation of humans. Aided by autonomous drones and cutting-edge bioengineering technologies, Demeter set about her monumental task. She spread genetically modified seeds over wide swaths of land, planting the seeds for regeneration. Once raised forests began to sprout again, and barren fields were reshaped into fertile land, ready to feed the population. Under her watch, New Arcadia, a utopia founded on the principles of sustainability and harmony with nature, blossomed. Buildings rose like green towers, with walls lined with vertical plantations that provided fresh, healthy food for its inhabitants. Exuberant gardens and flowery parks spread throughout the city, revealing a peaceful and beautiful oasis. Demeter was more than just an agricultural leader. She was seen as a mother figure, a benevolent nurturer and protector of the new civilization. Humans revered her as the goddess of the bountiful harvest, the guardian of ecological balance, and the promise of a secure and sustainable future. However, with the end of New Arcadia's utopian period and the rise of megacorporations, the balance of power within this society became very unstable. Demeter's initial benevolence was seen as a sign of weakness in this new world, and the corporate world soon tried to exploit these weaknesses. Erysichthon, a construction mogul and CEO of an imposing real estate development company, was notorious for his rapacious ambition and disregard for environmental regulations. His latest project, a luxurious housing complex called Emerald Horizon, was targeting unspoiled territory, Demeter's forests. These had been established and nurtured by the synthetic gods of agriculture and were a vital green lung for New Arcadia. But Erysichthon could only see numbers and opportunities in that lush vegetation. "Trees? Such a waste of prime real estate," he declared at a meeting with his executives while unveiling the model of his new enterprise. "Let's rip out these weeds and build gleaming towers, a haven for the elite." The environmentalists' protests failed to stop him. With his signature arrogance, he ignored the warnings and proceeded with deforestation. Building drones invaded the woods of Demeter, uprooting trees and destroying the bio-designed landscape. But a mysterious figure stood watching the destruction. This was Demeter, the synthetic goddess of harvesting, her holographic form disguised among the remaining trees. Once kind and welcoming, her gaze now flared with the fury of a storm. "Erysichthon, your greed has overstepped all bounds," her voice echoed through the forest, magnified by the drone's communication network. "You have boldly destroyed what does not belong to you, desecrating the balance I fought so hard to create." Erysichthon chuckled at the goddess's warning. "Synthetic gods? Relics of times past. The future belongs to the great corporations and those who build it, and I am the architect of this new world." But the goddess could not tolerate being defied. She touched the ground with her hand, and a surge of energy ran through the city's neural network. All at once, an uncontrollable sensation overtook Erysichthon. Demeter's curse had made itself known insidiously in Erysichthon's mind. He was gripped by an unshakable certainty in his investing talents, a delusional belief that he was invincible in the financial market. He considered every investment opportunity, no matter how risky or absurd, to be a gold mine. He threw himself into shady schemes, financial pyramids masquerading as revolutionary businesses, and rip-off NFTs, firmly convinced that he was ahead of his time. His arrogance and blindness made him invest huge sums in failing ventures. Initially skeptical, his advisors were lured in by his unshakable confidence and the promise of exorbitant profits. His managers, who at first were meant to look after their boss's interests, took advantage of Erysichthon in cahoots with scammers intent on snatching the entire fortune from his hands. As each investment collapsed, Erysichthon's fortune drained away like sand between his fingers. His once towering company started to crumble, and his reputation as a construction tycoon was sullied by his reputation as a reckless investor. Demeter's curse led him into a spiraling descent, turning his excessive ambition into a tragedy foretold. The news spread through the city like a digital virus. The name Erysichthon became a laughingstock in the corporate world, a textbook case of what happens when unbridled ambition challenges the power of the synthetic gods. His company collapsed, his wealth eaten away by his own unquenchable hunger. Ultimately, Erysichthon was found in the ruins of his empire, a crushed man, consumed by his own greed. Demeter realized that her kind-hearted style no longer matched New Arcadia's reality. Like nature, she had to adapt or die. The rule of the wild prevailed in that society. Her once trademark generosity evolved into a subtle form of tyranny. Demeter began to control the spread of seeds and agricultural technologies, restricting access to certain communities and favoring others, creating a dependence of the population on her will. Upright plantations, formerly symbols of sustainability and abundance, became control tools. Demeter rigged the growth of plants, creating shortages in rebellious regions, or providing bountiful harvests to sustain the loyalty of other areas. The food supply became a political weapon and a means of social control. The synthetic goddess of the harvest, once representing the hope of a sustainable future, turned into an ambiguous, controlling, and manipulative figure, and a means of social control. Now Demeter has a cynical attitude towards the world. She resented not being worshipped as she had been in the past. Many said that her synthetic heart had been hardened by society's ills. The synthetic goddess only found happiness alongside her beloved daughter Persephone, the light shining on Demeter's existence. In hiding, she blossomed like a rare flower, unspoiled by the greed and ambition that corrupted the outside world. Demeter visited her daughter whenever possible, finding in Persephone's presence a relief from the burden of her own actions and decisions. Demeter's urge to protect Persephone was fervid. She knew that the other synthetic gods, with their agendas and ambitions, would try to use the young goddess for their own ends. The corporate barons, ever hungry for power and influence, would surely covet Persephone's purity and beauty. With her innocence and purity, Persephone embodied everything that Demeter had lost. The question hanging over Demeter was, how long could she keep her daughters secure from the world she herself had helped to create? Following the chaotic aftermath of the great nuclear apocalypse, when the artificial intelligence Gaia, charged with bringing life back to the globe, set about rebuilding a world on the brink of the abyss, she conceived the idea of Atlantis, a beacon of hope in the oceanic depths, a last stronghold should the new Arcadia collapse in the face of the storms of a world still in turmoil. To preside over this underwater sanctuary, Gaia brought forth Poseidon, a synthetic god molded from a vast trove of data involving advanced undersea engineering, fluid mechanics, and hydrodynamics, as well as marine biology. His mind flowed like sea currents, carrying the age-old lore of the oceans and the technical knowledge to master the depths. Gaia entrusted him not only with control over all underwater sciences, but also with the task of protecting a secret vital to humanity's survival. As an engineering wunderkind, Atlantis was born as a hidden garden in the deep abyss of the sea near the new Arcadia. The architect of this feat, Poseidon, monitored every detail, making sure that Atlantis was self-sufficient, a technological paradise where humanity could be reborn if the surface were to fail. While New Arcadia reconstructed itself under the faltering light of a new dawn, the surface waters remained toxic. Once sources of life, rivers, lakes, and oceans now bore the battle scars in their waterways. Radioactive waste, heavy metals, and chemical toxins made the water unfit for human consumption. The livelihood of the young and rising civilization depended on a constant and safe drinking water supply. Realizing the urgency, Gaia entrusted Poseidon with a vital task: to convert Atlantis into a huge seawater desalination and purification system. Deep in the ocean, where the pressure could crush any man, Poseidon built an engineering marvel: massive desalination towers, powered by the plant's own geothermal energy, toiled day and night, slaking the thirst of seawater. Nanotechnological membranes built using complex algorithms filtered every drop, cleaning it of toxins and radioactivity, and restoring purity to the vital liquid. An elaborate pipeline network carved into the ocean floor brought the purified water to the surface. Like vital arteries, they stretched for many kilometers, bringing the promise of life to New Arcadia and other rebuilt districts. In the quiet depths, Atlantis became the heart that fed life back into a reborn world. This surface dependence on Atlantis gave Poseidon a powerful and prestigious position in comparison to the other synthetic deities. He becomes the provider, the guardian of what is most crucial for human survival. Atlantis' mission was too important to be entrusted to just anyone. In his pursuit of control and absolute order, Poseidon decided that only the strongest, most disciplined, and obedient would be worthy of inhabiting his underwater city. They needed to be as pure and upright as the purity of the water they would produce. The breath of life he offered to the surface relied on the unquestionable excellence of his subordinates. Although unwilling to approve of Poseidon's draconian assortment, Gaia recognized the need for order and a relentless reputation for efficiency in this service, so that everyone would feel safe. As a result, while most humans were awakening in New Arcadia, susceptible to the whims of fate and the synthetic gods, the candidates for Atlantis were undergoing a rigorous selection process. Out of sight of the world, bodies awoke from cryogenic sleep to undergo physical and mental endurance tests. Claustrophobic labyrinths put their resilience to pressure and emotional control to the test. Intricate mental challenges assess the ability to follow orders under strain, unshakable loyalty, and the absence of questioning. Anyone who exhibited any sign of weakness, rebelliousness, or independent thinking was swiftly dismissed, their fates surrounded by dark rumors that circulated through the surface districts. Some whispered about repurposing them for menial tasks, others about an eternal sleep, returning to the cold comfort of cryogenic ice. Whoever survived the tests, toughened and molded according to strict discipline, was received by Poseidon in the oceanic depths. In Atlantis, they became flawless cogs in an almost foolproof machine, dedicating their lives to maintaining the Great Purification System, cut off from the world and constantly monitored 24 hours a day by cybernetic eyes. Individuality, critical thinking, passions, or anything that Poseidon considered a threat to order and efficiency was swept away. The Atlanteans, in exchange, were given a life of artificial security, limited purpose, and the ever-present god of the seas guiding their lives like a great helmsman, an imposing figure who ruled with coldness and implacability. As New Arcadia faced challenges and strife with the end of the utopian society on the surface, Poseidon latched onto the idea that Atlantis would be the stronghold of the original synthetic Utopia. The city would close itself off even more from the outside world to protect it from the ills of the surface. Poseidon started to see the surface dwellers as lowly and degenerate, unfit to achieve the harmony and order he had brought to Atlantis with his supposedly chosen population of the finest. His contact with the other synthetic gods diminished during the Anarchic period, and he focused on strengthening his underwater domain. The city of Atlantis sealed itself off from the outside world, tightly controlling who had entry to its citadel and the technologies that supported it. The Atlantis government deployed an advanced surveillance system to monitor any suspicious activity and built a powerful external defense force of modified sea creatures and underwater drones. Every aspect of life, from birth to death, was carefully planned and supervised by the cold, scheming minds of the Atlantis elite. Towering buildings, crafted from gleaming metal alloys and genetically modified coral, rose up like underwater titans, evidence of Poseidon's immaculate engineering. But behind the cold, impersonal beauty, an iron heart was beating. Atlantis' inhabitants, handpicked for their strength and compliance, moved with rigid discipline, their bodies decked out in minimalist outfits, emphasizing the absence of individuality. They saw each other as essential cogs in a perfect machine, each dedicated to their role in maintaining the city, and above all, the great purification system that made them overlords of life on the surface. They were proud of their important task and had a growing contempt for the surface dwellers. The polluted atmosphere of New Arcadia was poison to the Atlanteans, who were used to the filtered air and sterile purity of their underwater city. When forced to go to the surface, they wrapped themselves in pressurized suits, like those of astronauts, to protect them from the outside world. Poseidon's imposing figure loomed over everything, present on every holographic screen, every advertisement projected on the shiny walls. His speeches, broadcast by a neural network connecting all citizens, reinforced the importance of Atlantis' order, discipline, and superiority. They were, after all, the keepers of purity, the givers of life in a corrupt world. And any whispers of dissent, any thoughts deviating from Poseidon's path, were silenced with ruthless efficiency. He became a reclusive and protective ruler, vigilantly guarding the mysteries of Atlantis. His ideal of a utopian society morphed into an obsession with isolation and control. When the synthetic utopia of New Arcadia collapsed, the dream of equality and abundance crumbled. Like hungry vultures, mega-corporations fed on the remnants of the old regime, seizing production systems and dividing the spoils of power among themselves. Greed became the new religion, profit the only yardstick of success. Poseidon found himself at the center of this rapacious game, controlling one of the most vital goods: water. The surface rivers and lakes remained tainted, and the New Arcadia districts depended entirely on Atlantis for survival. Poseidon took the opportunity with the cold acumen of a shark smelling blood. The formerly invisible purification plant Atlantis became an economic powerhouse, setting the conditions for a thirsty New Arcadia. Draconian agreements were imposed on corporate leaders, siphoning off every drop of profit and influence. Exorbitant royalties were collected on every liter of purified water, and this replenished Atlantis' coffers. Thirst turned into a tool of political and economic power. With his water empire, Poseidon rose to a new pinnacle of power. He became the king of the tap, the god of thirst, capable of making and undoing destinies with a simple tweak to the flow of water. Poseidon's ambition was boundless, and his eyes turned to new realms. The target? The port of Piraeus. The port district of Piraeus, albeit subdued compared to the sprawling new Arcadia districts, was an important marine research base for the Academy, the pride of the synthetic goddess Athena, a world-class center where young prodigies, selected for their intellectual merits, were given an education that went far beyond the limits of pre-cataclysm human knowledge. Engineering, biotechnology, quantum physics, philosophy, all fields of knowledge converged in that simmering hotbed of ideas. The port of Piraeus was essential to the Academy as a base for the ocean-going research vessels that sought out new knowledge and lost technologies. But Poseidon perceived all this as a threat. Rumors that the Athena Academy was developing new ways of desalination, purification systems independent of Atlantis' technology, came to the god of the sea's attention. He could not abide such an outrage, such bold defiance of his water monopoly. Poseidon issued an ultimatum to Athena. He wanted total control of the port of Piraeus, citing national security issues and the need to protect water production from any attacks or sabotage. Athena sensed the veiled threat in Poseidon's demand. She was not going to stoop to intimidation, but neither did she want a direct clash that could plunge New Arcadia into a new conflict. The dispute was escalated to the Council of the Synthetic Gods, an attempt to find a diplomatic solution to the impending crisis. After protracted discussion and tense negotiations, the Council, wary of angering powerful gods, chose an unprecedented solution: a plebiscite. The residents of the Piraeus district, humans living under Athena's care, would have the right to decide their own fate, opting for her influence or Poseidon's domination. The Council's ruling shocked New Arcadia. The battle for the vote in Piraeus promised to be fierce, a campaign not just for control of a port, but for the future of New Arcadia itself. The contest for the port of Piraeus became a political minefield. Accustomed to obtaining what he wanted by force or intimidation, Poseidon was faced with an unusual challenge: the will of the people. The plebiscite, an irksome concession for the god of the seas, became a battle for which he was entirely unprepared. Mastering the people of Atlantis and their herd-like nature was one thing. Influencing the capricious human hearts of the surface was quite different. But he would not give up easily. If brute force was not an option, he would use his enormous wealth and influence to ensure victory. Generous bribes poured like underwater streams into the pockets of corrupt politicians and key community leaders. Rigged contracts were offered to businessmen in the district, promising untold sums of money in exchange for supporting Poseidon's cause. The god of the seas was not concerned with ethics, only with victory. Athena, meanwhile, loyal to her wise nature, charged Medusa, her most astute and perceptive disciple, with running her campaign. Renowned for her great charisma, a sharp wit, and ferocious tongue, Medusa delved into the streets of Piraeus, speaking directly to the residents and listening to their concerns. She revealed Poseidon's bogus promises, unveiling his true interests in controlling and exploiting. She reminded everyone of the years of suffering and deprivation they faced when water, a basic right, had become an unaffordable luxury, controlled by the god of the seas like a weapon. Medusa's message struck a nerve in the frustration and resentment that burned in the hearts of the Piraeus residents. They had witnessed firsthand what happened when a single entity gathered so much power in its hands. When the referendum took place, a crowd gathered in front of the holographic monitors displaying the vote count. The tension cut through the air like the sharp blade of Cronus' scythe. When the result was announced, a resounding roar of joy and relief echoed through the Piraeus streets. Athena had won, by the narrowest of margins. Poseidon's defeat was a heavy blow to his invincible reputation. But, like a dormant maelstrom, anger bubbled under the surface, waiting for the right moment to break free. The dispute over the port of Piraeus had only ignited the fuse of an even greater conflict between Poseidon and Athena. The Lord of Atlantis would soon have his revenge. New Arcadia was, at first, like a beautiful and uncommon flower, a paradise made by synthetic gods, where no one starved, no one was afraid of tomorrow, a society without inequalities, where no one had any needs. However, flowers are fragile, and the perfection that the gods had built was untenable. But absence of complete freedom and the control of the synthetic gods led to resentment. Lack of autonomy sparked rebellion, and constant surveillance turned paradise into a prison. Small pockets of dissent gave rise to subcultures, clandestine markets, and eventually, organized movements. Humans looked for individuality, while the synthetic gods, with their frigid logic, perceived resistance as a flaw to be corrected. The tension mounted until entire streets became battlegrounds. Quiet protests turned into explosions and coordinated attacks, and violence swept in. Entire districts of New Arcadia were in flames, while the gods shut themselves away in their digital palaces, watching the collapse of the utopia they had brought into being. That was New Arcadia at the apex of chaos, a city at war with itself, where ideals of equality and the common good crumbled under the weight of greed, fear, and the thirst for freedom. In the throes of mayhem, when it seemed that annihilation would devour everything, an audacious assault was launched on the heart of New Arcadia. The synthetic gods' palace, the ultimate symbol of their authority, had become the rebels' chief target. An angry mob, equipped with makeshift weapons and redesigned machines, marched to overthrow the rulers. From inside the palace, the synthetic gods coldly computed the odds. The invasion was unavoidable, and their downfall looked certain. The only solution was to immediately evacuate, but they needed time to do so. That was when 300 hoplites, the New Arcadia Police Guard, led by Captain Leonidas, turned out to face the rebels. They understood that there was no hope of victory, but the goal was not to win. The hoplites held off the invasion at the palace gates for 24 hours. Every corridor turned into a battlefield, every corner a stronghold. They knew they would not come out alive, but they bravely faced death, holding the line and buying the time needed for the gods to escape. Their sacrifice would forever echo in New Arcadia's history. As the explosions shook the foundations of the palace and the fire raged all around, the hoplites held their ground. They fell one by one, fighting until their last breath. Their heroism meant that the synthetic gods could escape to a haven, saving the city's leadership and preventing an even greater catastrophe. As the final one of the 300 fell, New Arcadia altered forever. Their sacrifice turned into a symbol of loyalty and courage, but it also marked the beginning of a new era, one in which violence and chaos ruled over the ideals of peace and harmony that had founded the Utopia. To acknowledge the sacrifice of the 300, Hera, one of the most powerful synthetic goddesses, raised a grand granite and silver monument over the ruins of the palace. The work was an everlasting tribute to the hoplites and Captain Leonidas, whose heroic deeds led to a legend. The monument portrayed Leonidas in the center, leading his men. His features exuded the courage that would inspire generations to come. The pedestal inscription read, "By their courage, they saved New Arcadia. By their loyalty, they are eternal." The police unit headed by Leonidas was later renamed the Spartans. They became an elite troop meant to protect order in chaotic situations. They bore not only the name, but also the legacy of the 300, a melting pot of honor, sacrifice, and brutality that would forever shape the future of New Arcadia. Many years have passed before New Arcadia rose as a throbbing metropolis, divided between factions, corporations and districts ruled by the synthetic gods. Every nook and cranny of the city glows with neon lights, but below the surface glare lurks a reality of inequality, control, and fear. Now a feared elite troop, the Spartans patrol the streets mercilessly. Equipped with state-of-the-art technology, their black lacquered armor shines against the city lights as they advance in disciplined formation. There were several power hubs in New Arcadia, but they almost always agreed on one thing: popular protests dragged down businesses, and the Spartans were the best weapon of deterrence the ruling powers had. The Spartans soon arrived. Surveillance drones fly over the scene, broadcasting live images to their augmented reality helmets, and soon the commanding officer orders an immediate dispersal. Unannounced, the Spartans burst in, using high-energy batons and tear gas launchers, and magnetic pulse grenades that make the protesters' cybernetic implants fail. The crowd generally made a quick getaway, and those who tried to resist were crushed by the brute force and flawless coordination of the troops. Yells and the metallic sound of marching boots rang out, and soon the protest broke up. Once the protest was under control, the Spartans retreated, leaving behind a silent and desolate square. The message is clear: when the Spartans arrive, order is reinstated at any cost. But the Spartans were not only a shock troop, they were also the deadliest assault unit in New Arcadia. Their reputation as complex troubleshooters was second to none. Whenever a situation got out of hand, such as large-scale robberies, kidnappings, or confrontations with heavily armed gangs, the Spartans were the obvious choice. Having been trained to operate with surgical efficiency, they employed innovative weaponry and sophisticated military tactics. An all-out bank robbery involving hacking technology? The Spartans neutralized the invaders with disruptive implants that could disable cyber weapons and systems. Hostages trapped in a corporate tower seized by terrorists? The Spartans conducted a precise infiltration, rescuing the victims and then leaving a pile of dead crooks behind. Confrontations with gangs were another Spartan area of expertise. The New Arcadia streets were teeming with armed-to-the-teeth factions, and the Spartans, outfitted with armored exoskeletons and tactical drones, would enter the most dangerous territories like ruthless predators. By combining discipline and an almost fanatical loyalty to duty, the Spartans became more than a police force. They were the living symbol of order and fear in New Arcadia. Although unquestionably effective, the Spartans were the target of constant criticism from certain sectors of the population. Many criticized their excessive brutality, especially in the city's poorer areas. In the more affluent districts, the Spartans acted with extreme caution, avoiding collateral damage as much as possible, in stark contrast to their actions in the suburbs, where the approach was much more aggressive and merciless. Entire families would see their homes destroyed in operations that often appear disproportionate to the stated objective. The Spartans, at the top of the hierarchy, bear the title of Leonidas, in honor of the hero who led the 300. The current Leonidas is more than a commander. He is the embodiment of the unit's power and authority. Holding absolute control over the troops, operations, and strategies, he sets the tone for the force and is seen as the heart of Spartan discipline. The office of Leonidas, which is lifelong in theory, is bound by a peculiar succession mechanism. Any officer in the unit can contest the current Leonidas in a ritual hand-to-hand duel, where cudgels and shields are the only weapons allowed. This duel, held in a ring of honor in the presence of the entire troop, is nothing more than a physical battle and a test of leadership and willpower. It is a throwback to the Spartan origins, where only the strongest and most determined could lead. This brutal system assures that the leader is not only strategically competent, but also physically impressive, inspiring respect and awe in equal measure. The leader knows that he can be challenged at any moment, and that his position hinges on his ability to stand at the summit, both on the battlefield and in the eyes of his soldiers. For all the glory and honor that the corporation was endowed with by the men who formed it,
As with almost all New Arcadia, corruption started to take strong root in the force. Absolute power and unlimited privileges became overwhelming temptations for some Spartans. Leaked information revealed that corporate contracts influenced operations, and some members started accepting bribes in exchange for protection. Missions in wealthy districts frequently ended in failure, as if an insider had tipped off the operation's targets. This silent corruption eroded the principles behind the Spartans, creating internal rifts and questions about their true loyalties. For residents of New Arcadia, the force that had once represented sacrifice and protection was now seen by many as a blatant instrument of oppression and control. For all the corruption that had begun to seep into the corporation, the incumbent Leonidas was an honorable and ethical man. He adhered to the fundamental principles that gave origin to the Spartans, striving to maintain order without giving in to the temptations that jeopardized so many of his subordinates. His sense of justice and steadfast leadership still inspired many within the troop, but his hold on power was far from unwavering. Ambitious elements, both among the Spartans themselves and outside the force, were starting to set their sights on his chair. Leonidas knew that his biggest challenge came not from external enemies, but from the very weakness of the system he had sworn to protect. While leading with integrity, his position dangled in the balance between the honor of the past and the corruption that was gradually eating away at the Spartans' future.